bit of audio issue. Give us just 1 sec. Clear this up. Just 1 second. Okay, so looks like the audio issues are all good as reported by the moderators. So we're going to get started here today. I will be going through all 3 divisions at Datametrex here today. There are a lot of questions coming in, so a lot centered around the AI and some of the announcements that have gone out in the last week. So we will start on those here first and go from there and cover as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Quick note about formatting. We've had a lot of requests over the past few months just to take a quick break right in the middle of this for a couple minutes for people to, get some water or use a washroom or something. So right around 12:30, we'll take just a couple minute break, not long, and then come right back. Okay, so let's get started. Well, welcome to 2023. We didn't have one last January as everybody was still on holidays. So here we are, 2023. We've made a lot of announcements in the last week. We're starting to take some of the wraps off a lot of the work that Nextology's been doing over the past year, and we're gonna continue to do so. So, just keep watching that and keeps being here. And as this unfolds, you guys will be the first to know. So what's going on? Nextology. Let's get to the questions. I'll do some general Q&A with Nextology real quick, some of the other questions, and I'm going to dive into the products and what we've been doing with those. With the questions around, chat transformers, et cetera. How does our AI work? Yada, yada. So general questions around Nextology. The first questions coming in are, what about the contracts with the government and where do those stand? Those are still going. These are, those contracts we're still on milestone 2 and we're still building. That milestone is set to be evaluated and stuff at the end of Q1 into Q2, somewhere in that neighborhood. And as soon as that's done, then we'll have the feedback from the contract and et cetera, and we'll be able to report on that. But again, it is ongoing, still going. Just to remind everybody, these contracts with those development contracts are long, right? These are not contracts for a month or two's worth of. These are set up multi-year endeavors, et cetera. And this is one of the reasons, some of the stuff we're going to get into here shortly with how the AI works and et cetera, should give you some insight into why, how those contracts are structured and how, how this works in general, with AI and et cetera. And what have we been doing in general in the AI? Okay. So the last little bit of general piece is, if you haven't been looking, we have, placed an emphasis on rolling out some of the product that we've been building over the past year. Now, we were able to unveil parts of it at a show in Ottawa, 6-7 months ago. So if you were in Ottawa for those shows, and, we posted some links on Twitter, et cetera, we were able to show off parts of the product there. Additionally, we've been able to show off part of the product this past fall, so in November in Montreal, at the cybersecurity show there. Now, we will be able to show off more and more of the product in the next couple months as some of the contractual obligations, fade away, some of the secrecy clauses, contractual obligations with the IP, et cetera, start falling off. So over the next couple months, we will be unveiling more and more of that product. Now, in addition to that, People asked about the other AI contracts. We saw some AI contracts last fall coming out from the United States, and again, we just recently announced, an update with Latte, so they're on to continue renewing their contracts and stuff. So that's what we've been doing over the past, just quarter or so. So there's been a large emphasis on getting ready to, roll out updates to our products, et cetera, and to make sure that, our existing clientele in it are aware of what we're doing. And, there's been an uptick and definitely an interest in what we're doing there. But again, we'll be able to unveil more and more of that over the next couple months, as those contractual obligations fall off and we're able to do it. So now, next one. Okay, so the biggest questions and the ones that we're going to spend the most time on today is what is GPT and how does this stuff work, in so many words. So I'm going to attempt to answer that along with what are the differences with, how does our AI work versus, different AIs on the market today? What and how does it relate to different investment pieces that people have seen come across, et cetera. So we'll get started at the top of this. Just at the top, what is it? What does it work? And how does it work? So what is AI is too broad a topic for this conversation. But what we will tackle real quick is what is a generative pre-trained transformer. So that's the GPT part of these AI models that you guys may have seen in the news, et cetera. So the biggest one, for instance, was ChatGPT, which was released last fall. But what is GPT? GPT generally stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. What it really amounts to is it's a type of AI model, okay? So that people, and this particular type of AI model is very good at talking, at generating prose, right? It's a language model, all right? And so it's basically an introduction to reinforcement learning, supervised learning with an output that's geared towards transfer learning. Now, what does that mean in layman's terms? It means it's really good at writing prose and talking to you. So it has an excellent interface. All right. And that's important. And we're going to come back to that later. But again, the GPT part, this is just it's a pre-trained model, artificial intelligence model. This is the third one in the family of models that OpenAI released for ChatGPT is. There were some previous models that they released that didn't gain as much momentum or attraction. So that's what GPT is. In general, it's the outcome of natural language processing. So there's been a lot of people working on these GPT things for a long time. Like if you guys remember Dragon Naturally Speaking, that had a lot of employees in Montreal, was working on these GPT models 20 years ago. Additionally, you may have heard of Microsoft. There's other ones out there. There's competing models. Microsoft has one called TNLG for Turing Natural Language Generator. It's another model, right? Now, so, well, how does it work and what can you do with it and why is that important? Well, this ChatGPT, let's start with how does it work? Well, in this case, a GPT, you talk to it. Yeah, it's not really that simple. But you need to train. What it does is it simulates thought processes, patterns, and tries to make predictions in its simplest form. Okay, so you can interrogate that model and ask it questions, and it's going to do its best to give you, the answers as it best understands them. So how does it understand them? Okay. Well, that's where this gets into, what you can do with these models, how to host them, how to train them, et cetera. So back in the day, 10, 20, 30 years ago, we needed clusters and clusters and clusters of computing to figure out, is this a cat or is this a dog, in a photograph. And it would take days and days and days for a cluster of computers or servers to get the answer. Okay. And that speaks to approachability of AI. Well, ChatGPT and why it's important is it knocked that barrier down. Okay. So it's approachable, it's easy to use, and it can make predictions that are useful in some sense. It can also make predictions that are not useful, much like, humans and everybody else. But, the viability of those predictions is not the topic of this discussion. So what does it use to make those predictions? Well, in the case of ChatGPT, lots and lots of data that's been gleaned off the internet, fed to it, and in a lot of cases specifically tailored in order to make the outputs of the model palatable. Remove racist tendencies, things of this nature. Remove some political biases from it, etc. Things like that. Now, and then, once all that information is in there, then the model can use that information to say what is the highest probability for the outcome of the question I was just asked. So basically, if X happens, what's the probability of Y happening? And that's at the highest level how these things are working. Now, well, it just signed me out. Just 1 second. So I got signed out. All right, I'm back in. Now, so how does that compare to our AI? And that's the next question. So we've got a generative models out there, and the stuff that's generating lots of stuff in the press. Well, why is that important to us, right? And why is that important to Nexology? Why is that important to Datametrex? Well, both of our AIs, here's the similarities. They're both built on top of an API that can be leveraged by third parties. Okay. All of Nexology's work has been built on top of an API, and that API has been accessible for years via contracts, third parties, etc. And in the business, this is called white labeling. In the past, you may have seen this for people who've been around the business for in the longer term. Nexology has used that white labeling to power, say, billboards and stuff at C2 in Montreal in the past. And you'd never know that it's Nexology's tech powering that because you don't see it. That's the white label. They're accessing the API, etc. Both of these are built on APIs like that. And that the API that we have has been in the field for 5-7 years, something like that. Powering government applications, the stuff in Korea, even back in the day, Ford Motors, etc. So that's there. It exists. It's battle tested. It's been developed in conjunction with various military entities, etc. It really works, right? And this is where big businesses have been interested in this for quite some time. We're going to come back to that, and that's another way that ChatGPT did their layout correctly to make it accessible. So we both have that, and we've had ours for quite some time. And both of these, both Nexology's APIs and these APIs that are out there are reference implementations built on top of those APIs, right? So why is that important? It means in conjunction with the API, you can build more implementations on top of it and you can adapt it. Okay. So And that's already proven. The reference implementations are there. We have the reference implementations that we give you when you sit down for, either seat license or installation or purchase. You get a reference implementation to use. In addition, I mentioned some earlier, people have built other implementations on top of it, like C2, previously in Montreal. And this is the most important part. They're both predictive technologies. Okay. So, but this is also where they differ. All right. The predictive technologies inside ChatGPT and other GPTs are primarily centered around those the chat transformers. Now we have parts of that, but again, what really makes Nexology stand out is the fact that it's built around predictive analytical technologies. Okay, so predictive analytics, what's coming next. And that's generally what sets us apart. So we've been through, how these things are similar. Why, what sets Nexology apart and why is that important? The biggest thing that sets us apart is our AI is bent towards discovery, okay, and not just monitoring or answering chat in prose. So what we do is we can go out and through those sources of knowledge, that we train the models with and that we use as input, we can use our analytics to make reasonable guesses around what's going to come next in various different analytical fields. So what does that mean? It means we can tell you what's going to happen ahead of time in a lot of cases where you wouldn't have known that before. That's what discovery is. You don't know what you're looking for. All right. With monitoring tools and other things like that, which we also do, you know what you're looking for and you don't need us. You can go on Twitter and find out what's trending or, the CBC, BBC, or whatever news station you want to visit. You'll find out what's trending, what's going on, but what's going to be trending in 2 days or 7 days, or what you need to be paying attention to now in order not to get in trouble later. That's where our predictive analytics really shine, and that's the portion that has been of interest to governments and various large corporations over the years, et cetera. So what are those? Some different examples of how that's used. People have been asking about that. So, we explained discovery monitoring. The next one is like, for instance, predictive analytics around emotions and emotional state. Okay. So how is that useful? Let's say you're in HR, and this is a real world use case. Okay. You can you can look at the emails and how people are communicating among their peers and among themselves. And we can tell you, hey, this group is growing more vexed, by the week. Maybe, something's wrong. You should get ahead of it, etc. Or this group is performing really, really well. There's an uptick in their communications. This division, has been outperforming this other division. Why is that? And we can find those things ahead of time so you can be ahead of the game. In certain cases, in different deployments here, we've had HR departments reduce their turnover rates by 5+% just looking at these things. So that, what does that do? It saves a lot of money, when you're trying to rehire, anything like that. Other things that we can do, narrative shaping. And you've heard a lot of this before. Okay. We can use our predictive analytics to follow news and how it spreads online, where it's going to go next. What's the probability of it spreading to these other areas next? And in addition to that, if you change the narrative and change a few of the, inputs or the story, what do you think is going to happen and how does that affect the spread of it, et cetera? So in that case, think fake news, right? So again, predictive analytics. What do we think it's going to do? Where do we think it's going to go, et cetera? But where this stuff really, really shines, and one of the things that really sets us off or sets us out is what can you do when there is a limited amount of information? Okay. So when you're looking at a transformative model like ChatGPT or, its predecessors, InstructGPT, some of these others, the real holy grail of all of this is not those canned responses, right? Those responses are based um, primarily on the input that was put into it, et cetera, where the responses are fairly well known. Okay. Now, the holy grail of all of this and where discovery and why discovery is hard, and not just monitoring, is what do you do how do you respond and how do you get the correct response when it's unknown or when the data set that you've used to train the model is very limited. Okay. And that's where something called like an inference engine comes in. And that's a lot of what we're doing here is we're producing AI that helps in that inference. So what does that mean? Um, a good, for instance, is say any type of black swan event. So everybody on here is an investor. So I'm sure, a black swan event is something that's unpredictable. Stock market downturns, crashes, etc. Um, so you don't have a lot of information around those events. You don't have a lot of data around it. Okay. It just happened. All right. So this event's ongoing. It could be even ongoing right now, but we have to respond to it and we have to make intelligent responses to it. And we have to update our response in real time. And we have to, get it right, so to speak. But again, when you have a large amount of training data, right? And a large amount of room or whatever to find the answer in that space, it's a little bit easier. What do you do? When you have a limited amount of data, there's a small amount of time to react, etc. Those type of black swan events. What can you do with those? Well, that's the holy grail, right? That's the inference engine that, works a lot like a human mind. And this is what we do on a daily basis as humans. And it's the aspect of all of this AI where that we're just starting to touch on, in a larger sense. But it's also exactly where all of this is driving. Okay. So where are all these products going? They're going towards this inference engine, toward this discovery portion where when we have limited amounts of data, can we make good decisions, not necessarily 1,000% correct, but really good decisions on that limited amount of data. Then you can respond to black swan events, etc. Now, just to be clear, these are not like rules engines. Okay. So that's a different discussion. Rules engines are basically if X happens, then I do Y. So a good example of a rules engine is driving on the road. You see a stop sign, you stop. You see a yield sign, you slow down, etc. And as long as everything's working properly, then there's no issues. But the rules engine breaks down when things aren't working properly. So if there's no rule, right? So how does the engine interpret a rule or an event have any data on? That's what we're getting at here with these inference engine and the predictive analytics engines. What do you do when there's limited amount of space, limited amount of stuff? And then how do you make actionable insights around that? All right. That's part of the portion or part of the problem that we're trying to solve and have solved in many cases through the AI. So we can respond to those black swan events and we can make meaningful summaries of those events in not hours, which is what it normally takes decision makers to make, to get the information to make summaries of those. We can do it in minutes. So you're, in real-time applications such as, say, stock market trading, the military, etc., those minutes and hours are a lifetime. Um, so anyway, but that's basically, the high level of what it means to be discovery versus monitoring and responding to do that. Now, how does all of this, in a broad sense, tie into what we're trying to do with with Nexology, grow the company, investor base, et cetera? Because we've gone down quite a bit of a rabbit hole with, what our AI is, how it works versus, a general natural language processing unit transformer. Um, so how do we take all of this and what does it mean, and transform it into something meaningful for the company? So, well, the first thing that all this does, or how do we do it, is the unveiling of it all. Okay, so we're not the only company, obviously, that sees a lot of value in making AI approachable. Okay, and for us, the timing's pretty good. Like I said, really early on, the contractual obligations that we're having right now, or and some of those other pieces are coming off. So we are allowed to talk about and start showing off some of the work that we've been doing over the past year. And we've done that twice. Um, but again, the general atmosphere around AI and the amount of traction that it's gaining with ChatGPT is very fortuitous. Timing's good, etc. Now, but in a product sense, why is this important and what's it going to do? Well, the most important thing that this did in the past 2 months is break down that accessibility and acceptance barrier. And now I'm getting pinged that it's time to take just a couple minute break. Let everybody take 2 to 3 minutes, and then we'll start up in just a second. And I will explain, what that accessibility means and why it's important to Datametrex and investors and et cetera going forward. So take 2 minutes, make it quick, and then come right back. Thanks. Okay, so that's been a couple minutes. I don't want to spend any more time on the breaks, so let's get started again. There is a recording, so anybody that may have, stays away for longer than a couple minutes can go back and all this. So we were talking about accessibility and barriers and why this is all important. So up until very, very recently, like, the last 10 years or so, uh, AI has been inaccessible. Now, why to most people? Why do I say that? Well, you actually use AI all the time. Most people just don't know it. Like I think the most visible example is when you're buying things and they're trying to get you to buy more, you know, uh, and you see this on every website, have for decades. Hey, everybody who bought, the toaster also bought the microwave. So please buy that. That's a very, primitive use of AI on how to do this. Another thing you're seeing, driving, self-driving cars. While they're not everywhere, they are there. There's even AI being, you're starting to see it in television programming, et cetera. But the point is, it's behind the scenes. Okay. It's not directly accessible to the average person, and which means it's also not directly accessible to say your average business, your small business, etc. AI has always been governed and in the realm of large corporations, governments, people that have large amounts of resources to pour at these problems. Um, and just to give you guys some grounding in this, just think about that ChatGPT model we were talking about. It's like almost a terabyte as far as its just physical footprint is concerned. Just running that, you couldn't really do effectively on, say, a home computer, right? You could if you were just talking to it by yourself, et cetera. But the minute like 10 people start talking to it, that's the end of it, right? It's going to fall apart. So it's a bit of an extreme example, but that's how it works, and that's why that accessibility's not been there. So there's been a barrier to that accessibility as far as resources are concerned, right? There's also been a barrier to that accessibility as far as the tooling is concerned. Now, what do I mean by that? The resources are easy to grasp. You need large amounts of computing power to leverage this stuff. And that's, we all know that's been the accessibility to that amount of computing power has been coming down dramatically. And it's to the point that everybody carries a giant phone in their pocket that can, send people to the moon and back easily. So that one's fairly simple to explain. The second one, though, accessibility from a tooling perspective is a little bit more difficult. Like, how do you, for instance, previous to, say, these chat interfaces, like how would I make use of an AI model, or how would I produce a new AI model, or even talk to one or train one? Well, in a lot of cases, you wrote computer code, right? So you talk to it through vectors, through different software languages and programs, APIs, etc. And that's how it's done, right? So who can do that? Well, mom and pop grocery down the street definitely can't. Well, the Samsungs of the world can, the governments of the world can. They do have the resources to put teams of data scientists on this stuff. And then, the next piece of accessibility, is then how do you adjust those models? Okay. So what the ChatGPT model out there is interesting, right? But can it solve real world problems right here, right now? My problems, right? So how do I take that particular model and tailor it to my set, like my problem set? The first for instance, I'm in Montreal. Um, I want to sell, I don't know, anything. I want to sell more cabbage. Okay. How do I fix that issue? Well, a model like ChatGPT is not going to be able to help you with that as it doesn't have the knowledge to do it. And then getting that knowledge and that data to solve that problem is going to be difficult, um, for the average person, right? They're not going to be able to get shipping statistics, et cetera, around their local store that sells cabbage, usage patterns, how many people are buying it, et cetera. None of that information's available, much less they can't even talk to the model that could solve the problem for them, much less they had the computing power to host it. So add all that up and, well, AI as a tool for problem solving for the average person is not useful. It just doesn't work. Okay. Now that's changing and it's changing fast. And this barrier to accessibility is one of the main reasons that there's been a lot of investment surrounding AI in the past year. All right. Because people know that accessibility barrier is coming down. The accessibility barrier is part of the contracts we're working on now. Part of that mandate is make it more accessible, right? And there's, while the governments of the world and the big corporations do have the money to throw teams of PhD, mathematicians at it, why would you want to do that? And not every department wants to incur that large amount of expense. So if we can make it a commodity and hand it to people, it becomes that much more useful. That's what this has really shown in the last couple months is once that barrier comes down, or once you can cross that accessibility barrier, is AI useful? And the answer to that is a profound yes. And that's, really been proven in the last couple months as you can, real people can interact with different models using natural language and get a decent response out of them. Now, they're not to the point they can solve the cabbage problem I described earlier. That's a contrived problem, et cetera. But I can talk to it. I can approach it. I can start making inroads into making AI useful for me on a day-to-day basis outside of limited scopes, like say Google Maps. I'm not going to need a separate app to do absolutely every single thing I want to do with AI, right? We're going to have more approachable models, right? Now, as far as the business is concerned, and why is that important? Well, it opens this stuff up to a whole range of clientele. So let's start from the top. You already have large corporations putting a lot of stock into this. We're seeing it with Samsung, Latte, etc. So the whole, we're seeing it with the contracts we see now, the predictive analytics they're using. You even saw, they're testing things in a factory. So these types of pieces can be used in different areas, using the same research. So these analytics are definitely valid in those different, areas. Well, that's what we've seen today, bring it down a notch. Now we're at the ChatGPT level. Okay. What can be done there? Well, now you've opened it up to companies. I mentioned an API earlier. That's a B2B play, right? So companies can access that have, smaller amounts of resources. And with interfaces like what ChatGPT has proven, take down that barrier. And the interfaces that we have now, at Nexology, we can reduce that barrier. We can make that more accessible and more easily actionable to those smaller businesses and people that are wanting to use this not just in small businesses, but maybe in their hobbies or, in magazines or, whatever they're doing in their spare time, because that accessibility barrier has been conquered, right? Or has been stepped over. And I don't need a PhD in mathematics and know how to write code in order to talk to the AI and get meaningful information out of it, right? So, now, the major example, and I could go through a whole plethora of these, but this one really hits at the core of why this is important to businesses. Okay. Now if you've been paying attention to this, you've probably seen a lot of dollar figures thrown around, right? The AI piece for information, as soon as that accessibility problem really gets overcome and we start seeing these AI pieces like what Nexology builds and stuff get into the hands of consumers, is going to be as disruptive to business models as, say the cell phone and the internet were, right? Because it puts that computing power at your fingertips that previously, like I said, was the realms of corporations. So when you see, people like Microsoft saying they're going to invest $10 billion in here, you don't invest it because $10 billion were, because you think you're going to have a new mapping tool. No, they're looking at larger apps like, say, search. Okay. Why in the world, would I go to, say, a Google web page, search for something, and have to sift through 2 pages of ads or whatever it is, and then try to get the information I'm looking for? Well, in the 90s, when the previous way to get that information was to consult an encyclopedia at your library, yeah, that's a lot easier. That being said, if you can pull up a model like this and just ask it a question and get the right answer out of it, that kills search as a business model, like just kills it dead in the water. Now, what does that mean? Well, long term, that means all those specialized products and pieces that we're using to expose AI to, people aren't going to be necessary, right? So I won't need a specialized map programs. I won't need specialized, tools to tell me what to buy. I won't be specialized tools like other tools online, cheap rates, right? Shopping tools like Google's got Frugal. Where's the cheapest microwave in the next 100 kilometers? Those types of things. You're going to be able to talk to it, right? That's the interface. And in addition, because those interfaces now can understand natural language, we don't have to change the way we communicate with the computer. I don't have to learn the math behind it. I don't have to learn how to write code in, say, Python or C or whatever computer language. I do not have to change the way I communicate. I can talk to it, and now I can utilize that computing power. That's insane. As far as putting more computing power in every person's hands, this is the next stage, right? It is the absolute holy grail, and it's everything that everybody's scared of when you hear about Terminators and Skynet and red pills and blue pills and things like that. But we're not going to go into the ethics discussion right now. So what does that do? It allows me to make better predictions about my businesses very simply, very easily. And I don't need to own, $10,000 in RAM in one computer just to do it. We can host those models elsewhere. We can make them fast. We can make them accessible. When there's a black swan event, for instance, in my business, or if there's a problem, say, I don't know, if I'm on the markets and I'm a day trader, and I want some information about a particular company, or I see, a black swan event happening in the market right now, and I need Nexology to go out and find out exactly what just happened on that stock, and I need that information in 15 seconds. That's the type of thing we're going to be able to, that we can bring and make accessible to people. Okay. And again, that ups the game, tenfold, right? This is an order of magnitude increase about what we're going to be able to put at people's fingertips. So, excuse me, just one second. That's really where this is important, and why it's so important to us, and why there's so much traction around it now. And also why you see companies, like I said, putting so much money into this right now, because they understand that as this stuff unfolds over the next, 12 months, 24 months, etc. And it's going to unfold fast, right? If you're not at the cutting edge of this, you're going to get left behind. And that's why you see the Microsofts and the Googles and the Apples and everybody ponying up so much money in order to make sure that they're not behind, because those interfaces are coming down, and those interfaces are coming, those barriers to entry are coming down much faster than anybody anticipated. And so that's how it works. And so now it's 12:50. So let me get on to some more of these. I'm going to go through this as fast as I can. But I hope that's a great overview of why this is important, and why it's so important to investors and investment firms, et cetera, and why AI is on everybody's radar right now, and what we're doing with it at Nexology, and why ours works. So we're going to, in a nutshell, we're taking that battle-tested military platform. We've been working on that accessibility problem in conjunction with our partners and sponsors for a year now, and over the next 6 months or so. And even starting in the next couple months, we are unveiling that tech and showing it off, and we'll be showing more to the public and of the tech that's been in use, with our partners and sponsors for well over a year. So that's it. So how is it deployed? The stuff works. We can deploy anywhere from, a laptop all the way up to a cloud. All right. So people are asking how it's deployed and how it's priced. So deployment depends on, your computing power and how much you need, right? So we can scale it up and down. Like I said, you can do it on a laptop. It's going to be a little slow, or you can put it in a gigantic, you can put it in AWS. You can put it in whatever cloud you want to, and scale it all the way up. For the technically inclined, it works in containers. So anywhere you can run a container, you can run this, and containers are the scaling mechanisms. So we can scale that up, using whatever container orchestrator you like. Kubernetes is an example that's in the news a lot for people that are technically inclined. How is it costed? Right now, it depends on, there's three major ways this is costed. Individual licenses. Okay. That's for, small, I just want to do stuff for myself. There are group licensing options if you want to do that. And these are both hosted solutions, like we have been doing this for years, the software as a service pieces. Now, and those, depending on how much data you consume, and how much computing power you're using, that's how that's costed out. Okay. So you get so much per tier, etc. For very large installations, that's enterprise level costing. We do that on a case by case basis, but this is in case you want to consume, petabytes of data, which, some people are doing, and host it yourselves. So again, it's going to be a maintenance style contract. You can put it, you can put it on premise, et cetera, but that's something you'll have to talk to sales about. So now, excuse me. Now, next question. So, is the software in use at GBLC and ScreenPro? I'm going to say yes and no. Like I said, we're going to be unveiling who all's involved in all this over the next couple of months uh, as the contractual obligations come up and we're allowed to speak more publicly about these pieces, and if there's any, et cetera. But yes, internally, we do eat our own dog food. Okay. So there are people using it, and, we are always looking at, can we apply this tech to our own problems? So yeah, that's definitively. Um, but really, the big veils, the giant pieces of the veiling will start coming off here in the next couple months. Um, how does data encryption work for these? Data is encrypted at rest and in flight. So if that was a technical question that you needed answered, and no, we do not use quantum encoding. We do not have quantum computers here. So I believe those are the small scale pieces that have been asked about. Let me try to get on to a few more of these. We're running out of time here. Again, so people are asking. I'm getting a lot of questions coming in about acquisition inquiries. People that wanting to invest, etc. For those types of inquiries, those won't get any type that becomes material on there will be announced in press releases, as that's the rules. We're not allowed to talk about anything material on this particular channel. What I will say is this: with the news that we have been working on that acquisition, that barrier to entry that I was talking about earlier, and the fact that we've been doing it, with Department of Defense and different military entities, et cetera, and we've also been working on that problem for a long time. There's a lot of interest around this right now, like a lot. And so the fact, the timing for us is good. The previous work that we've been doing over the past couple of years is good. And, I'm glad we recognize that the accessibility would be an issue, moving forward. And we're, like I said, we're taking the gloves off and we're taking the veils off now. So yeah, there's been a huge uptick in interest, in that case. But again, anything that becomes material or anything like that will not be announced on Discord. So if you're coming here looking for that, I can't talk about it here. Uh, okay. So we've got 5 minutes left. I know there's a lot to talk about with the AI. I will be saving the questions. We will get more of them out, and we will be putting out more press releases and more details as we can, including stuff that we'll be updating, screenshots, product reviews, etc. This is the timing for all this is the next few months. Most of this is heading into Q2, so we will be, as we've already rolled this out with our current clients and with our partners in the government. So that stuff's already there. And all that testing has been going on for a while. Right now, it's just, packaging contractual obligations, et cetera. And as those come up in the next, few months, we're going to see those roll out, and you'll see the interfaces, the B2B interfaces, the B2C interfaces, et cetera. So watch the interviews, watch our PR, watch our social media channels that can all be found at datametrex.com. And you'll see this news as it rolls out. Now, so that's the best place to watch for those updates coming through here. And again, next month we'll be back on Discord for more in-depth discussion of those topics. Now, again, we've only got a few minutes left. Let me give a couple updates on some of the other two pieces. So Medicall and dm EVS. Again, so people are asking about start with DMEVS. Installations that are proceeding in British Columbia and stuff. Yeah, so the DMEVS boys are proceeding with installations through, in different areas in British Columbia. They did hit a few delays due to permitting. So the city, Vancouver itself and the province is backed up as far as getting their permits in order and getting that information out. So as soon as that's all they're waiting on in a couple cases is just a couple permits to come in. So as soon as there has been a couple delays there, but the contracts are coming in and they're still doing they're still bringing them in, doing the installations, working it, etc. The pay model, real quick, a lot of people have been asking about the pay model. The pay model is a combination of basically three things: installation and material costs, obviously, and that electricity costs and ongoing costs, and benefits, right? So what are benefits? Benefits usually come in the form of two different pieces. There are credits, right? And there are subsidies. So credits are, hey, I want to put in a tax credit for an individual. And subsidies, same thing. Also, larger tax credit to play, with government tax credits, carbon tax, footprint credits, et cetera. So depending on the installation and how you do it, it's a combination of those three things. And that's how the costing works out. So, the more pieces you put in, and the more that we put in, the less it costs per unit, et cetera, et cetera. So it's pretty standard as far as that's concerned. And then, but yeah, that's how it works. Now, Medi-Call, quick update. Look at what Medi-Call is doing right now. They've been rolling out kits from Lucira. So you guys saw that Medi-Call signed an agreement with Lucira to start tracking their patients. That started this past month in January, really started in earnest as a lot of the kits and stuff, the distribution pieces all started going out first couple weeks in January. So those are, hitting the client bases, et cetera, for the past couple weeks. And they've also been working to integrate the staff and stuff from Imagine Health Centers in Calgary and Edmonton. So those have been coming in now. So that includes, all the doctors and nursing staff and pharmacy staff, in addition to inventories, physical properties, et cetera. So all that has to be integrated, et cetera, for accounting, et cetera. And the last one on Medi-Call, I just got to answer real quick before we have to cut this off. And again, like I said, I will get to more questions, as I will be saving and getting as many questions as possible, especially with the AI, in some interviews, press releases, and again on Discord next month. U.S. expansion is the other thing that people asked about with Medi-Call. There's no U.S. expansion right now. Okay. So we're not looking to expand in the U.S. with Medi-Call at the moment. All right. I mean, Lucira is a U.S. based company, just to make sure that that's cleared up. But the distribution of kits and everything that we're talking about is in Canada. Okay. So Lucira does business in Canada, and we've been doing it with them for a while. So thank you everybody for being here today. There's more stuff than we could cover in the allotted time frame, but again, we're super excited and super happy about the direction this is going in the news lately. Watch our channels, watch datametrex.com, and we'll have more information as we roll out our new products in the AI space, and have more information coming up about the expansions of Medi-Call and DMEVS. So thanks everybody. I hope you guys have a great week. Thanks for being here. Take care.